I was reading this morning, earlier today, all the polling that's being done right now, political polling that seems to indicate that the Democrats are going to lose their asses in the midterms coming up this November. House, Senate, everywhere. As a matter of fact, with the exception of the presidency, when the smoke clears after the November elections, there will be very few Democrats left standing. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not very much. That's the impression that I get from the polling. People are absolutely convinced, at least the people who responded to the polls, they're absolutely convinced that the Republicans are the saviors of this country, whether it's about the economy or about how we handle the situation with Russia, or about, inflation would be the economy, about crime, just on and on. And the aspect that really intrigues me, other than the overall picture, how do people believe that Republicans are better equipped to handle what is needed in governance than Democrats, when the Republicans have displayed over and over and over again, especially in the last 40 years, that they are simply incapable of governing. And in the last 10 to 15 years, it has been so obvious. What have Republicans done? Except take away sovereignty from women, deny black people the right to vote. Just on and on. It's just, I can't get my mind around why these pollsters are coming back with numbers like this. The most crime-ridden organization in the country right now, and a crime-centered organization that has and will continue to have the most profound negative effect on this country, is the Republican National Committee. The fascist Christians who now own the Republican Party in this country. And it's just, the evidence is there every damn day about how corrupt and anti-democracy the fascist Christians have become. And yet, Americans are supporting them in each and every category of governance to a greater degree than supporting Democrats. I can't understand it. And I'm not a stupid man. I may be naive about certain. No, I'm not stupid. I'm not naive. I'm none of that. I've been around a long time. I can't get my mind around this. I can't figure this one out. The latest example, the Republican National Committee had asked a federal judge to block a subpoena that was issued by the Congressional Committee that's investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. This subpoena was delivered to the Republican National Committee's email vendor. And what the committee wanted was the records of that vendor, the record of emails. And the Republican National Committee sued the House panel on March 9th after the committee issued a subpoena to this company called Salesforce, Inc., which organizes donor information for the committee. Now, why did the January 6th investigative committee want that? Well, the committee said it wanted to understand the flow of emails from the RNC in the weeks before the attack on the Capitol. And they wanted to know who was saying that the election had been stolen, who was promoting within the RNC, who was promoting insurrection and violence and death on the steps of the Capitol. So the Republican National Committee said, oh, no, we don't want you to know any of that. But in an order that was signed late yesterday, Sunday, U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly tossed out the claims by the RNC that the subpoena to Salesforce was what the RNC claimed, that it was overbroad, that it seeks sensitive and proprietary data, yada, 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 yada. The judge had a 53-page opinion. One of the sentences, quote, "The RNC argues that the Select Committee lacks the proper authorization to wield investigative power on behalf of the House on 3 different grounds." Next sentence. "But for a few reasons, especially given the House's own reading of the authorizing resolution, this court cannot agree." End quote. So the judge said the subpoena stands and the RNC can fuck off in its attempt to hide even more pertinent information about the crimes committed by the Republican National Committee, by Republicans, by Christian fascists against this country. Wouldn't you think, gentle listener, that in a situation like this, all the parties concerned, if they were all innocent, would want all the facts out? Let the American people know what really happened. But every step along the way, Republican congresspeople, Republican senators, Republican operatives, Republican National Committee, Republican governors, all of whom are no longer Republican. They still claim the title, but they are not. They are fascist Christians. Every step along the way, they have used every single legal power available to stop this investigation. And in 60 different cases, when this filthy bastard Donald Trump tried to thwart the democratic process in this country, the results of the 2020 election, time after time, the court said, get the fuck out of here with this. And still it goes on. The center right now is right here in Fulton County, Georgia, which I'll get to in a minute. That's Atlanta. Now, the judge in the case I'm referencing here, he denied the RNC the restraining order that they were looking for. To block a subpoena for these records. But the judge, and this is what drives me crazy, in fairness to these scum-sucking gangsters, the judge temporarily barred Salesforce from releasing any records until the Republican National Committee had time to appeal his ruling. So the fascist Christians, yet again, over and over, endlessly, no let up, they use the democratic process, the constitutional process in this country, to destroy the democratic process, to destroy the constitutional process. And the judiciary in this country allows them to do it out of a sense of equal protection under the law, which the fascist Christians will deny to everyone except their commanders, except their gangsters, their militias. Everyone else will be denied equal protection. In their attempt to block the subpoena that the January 6th committee had issued to them, the RNC had claimed that the subpoena was, in their words, a fishing expedition that would chill the RNC and its supporters' First Amendment rights. See what I mean? See what I mean? The First Amendment rights that these rotten son of a bitches would take away from everybody else. And yet in this run-up to the ascension of the fascist Christians in this party, they use the Constitution that they plan on burning. Ah, you bastards. I mean, really. Really. Now, separately, the January 6th committee had said that the RNC, this is part of the reason for the subpoena, and the Trump campaign had solicited donations after the 2020 election, quote, by pushing false claims that the election was tainted by widespread fraud, end quote. I mean, the dishonesty, the corruption, the filthy destruction of this Christian cult bullshit to begin with just keeps going on. Now, the Reuters news agency asked the RNC for a comment. And the RNC more or less told the Reuters news agency to fuck off. They weren't going to say a thing. But if you remember, back in late March, what is considered to be a heavyweight in the lobbying business in this country, it's a firm called, here's the name, Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck. That lobbying organization withdrew from representing the RNC in its legal challenge against Salesforce and the January 6th committee. Now, why do you suppose that this lobbying firm, which I believe includes Barry Schreck, I don't know, maybe not, but why would this lobbying firm, for no apparent reason, say, you know what, we're not going to represent RNC anymore. This is fucking crazy. Let us out of here. You know the answer to that as well as I do, because the lobbying firm finally came to their senses. Finally came to their senses. I'd like to see somebody sentenced, is what's going on here. But the lobbying firm came to its senses and realized, you know, it's one thing to represent people who are shady. It's something else to represent people whom we know are criminals. But it is something entirely different to represent an organization actively, deliberately trying to destroy representative government in this country. So we're going to bail out. Which, in your humble and obedient servant's opinion here, is exactly why this lobbying firm said, enough already. But the corruption, more and more is coming out. The rioters who smashed their way into the Capitol on January 6th succeeded, at least momentarily, in delaying the certification of Joe Biden's election to the White House. We know that, right? But hours before, this mob of scum and filth and cowards and son of a bitches, all of those males, those white, insane, fucking cult-following males that smashed into the Capitol. Before that, Jim Jordan, of Ohio, tried to do the same thing. Yeah, Jim Jordan, this creepy fucker who was involved in covering up sexual molestation of athletes at Ohio State University by the athletic department's doctor. Jim Jordan, a scum sucker of the lowest fucking order. I mean, this guy. Texting, this is how the Associated Press puts it, texting with then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, who was a close ally and friend of Jim Jordan's, at nearly midnight on January 5th, Jim Jordan offered a so-called legal rationale of what Donald Trump was publicly demanding. And that was that Vice President Pence, in his ceremonial role of presiding over the electoral count, somehow assert authority, pulled out of thin air, I guess, to reject electors from the states that Biden won. That's what Jim Jordan was pushing Mark Meadows to push this ignorant fucking Donald Trump into putting pressure on Pence, more pressure to do this. Jordan wrote, these ignorant bastards, he wrote in a text or an email to Mark Meadows, quote, Pence should call out all electoral votes that he believes are unconstitutional as no electoral votes at all. End quote. That's what Jordan wrote to Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows replied, well, I pushed for this. Not sure it's going to happen. I mean, the criminality here The massive fucking criminality is just, it's just hard for me to comprehend that this criminality it's still ongoing. But all of this shit that these fascist Christians have been doing to destroy the United States under the guise of still being Republicans, and the American public, in its incredible ignorance, is still supporting this Republican Party. I have to assume it's ignorance. I have to assume that the vast majority of people who identify as Christian, God-fearing, America-loving Republicans are not aware of this. If they are aware of it, then these fuckers are the most hypocritical slime ever to exist in this country. They're right up there with the founders of this country who said all men are created equal, except the black ones. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.